You just pressed play on the Last Breath Huntcast, home of the Huntroversy. We're here to entertain, educate, and engage. And in case you didn't know, you only live once. But if you do it right, once is enough. Don't waste it. What's going on, guys? Welcome to episode number 49 of the Last Breath Huntcast, home of the Huntroversy. So, I am Grant, and in a couple of minutes here, I'm going to be calling our guests for part 2. If you did not listen to part 1, this is a 3-part episode in which we're going to discuss the ethics of eating what you kill. Our controversial topic, a topic that maybe has no right or wrong answer. As if you guys are listening to this for the first time, you'd notice in the introduction of our podcast here that we have the word controversy. That is a topic that we dive into pretty often on our podcast, and it's just a podcast for those in the hunting community to try to wrap their head around an answer, a question that is kind of hard to deal with and kind of hard to talk about. So, like I said, last episode we covered the ethics of eating what you kill. Does it mean you're ethical if you eat every single thing that you harvest as an outdoorsman or kill as an outdoorsman? Does it mean you're unethical if you don't? So we brought up coyotes, hogs, and I had put that question out on Facebook, and I said, can anybody defend their side? So there was a person that contacted me. His name is Bobby Bashaw, and I'm going to give him a call, like I said, in a few minutes here. And basically the gist of our conversation on social media, I just put the question out there, and he had responded to me. So before we give him a call and talk to him and get his side of the story, whether or not he thinks it's ethical for an outdoorsman to kill and harvest everything and eat everything that they kill, vice versa, or whether or not he believes it is unethical if you do not eat something that you kill. So we're going to get his take on that. He had some pretty good points that he brought up when he was speaking with me on social media. One notable point that he brought up, and he said something really well I really liked. He said, I often hear people say, shoot what you would eat. It's great in theory, but I think it means that would be turning their back on conservation and leaving it on somebody else's plate to manage. Pushing that logic or personal opinion is harmful to hunting. And I really liked that. I really liked that response. And so we're going to call him and see what he meant by that. And we're also going to dive into this a little bit more and get his take on it. He's going to introduce himself and when I call him in about a minute. But before we call him, I wanted to remind you guys that this is the Last Breath Huntcast. It's brought to you by Last Breath Media and Last Breath TV. If you're interested in checking out one of our hunts, check out the Last Breath TV YouTube channel or Carbon TV page. If you're on social, you can stay up to date with what we're doing on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. We're updating those daily. Interesting announcement about our video content and what we're doing to bring that more up and to date, but that'll be at the end of the episode. Big announcement on the launch party. Also going to announce that at the end of the episode. So thank you guys for your support. It really helps us out a ton. One last thing about Carbon TV. Carbon TV this year is doing something called the Carbon Awards. What the Carbon Awards are, they're taking the shows that people have really liked watching in the past, and they are broadcasting and having, I guess, a competition, if you will. And there's 13 categories that you can be nominated for, and 13 categories in which you can be awarded a Carbon Award. So the maximum amount of times that you can be nominated is 3. We were nominated for 3. The best moment, that would be one that we were nominated for, and that was when Matt killed Uh-oh. And if you want to see all these clips again, or if you haven't seen these, you can watch them on our YouTube channel or on Carbon TV. So when Matt kills Uh-Oh, that's what we were nominated for best moment. That was when Matt and Jesse killed Uh-Oh off the ground. Our second category rather, is best hunting. And that is when Matt and Jesse killed Phantom, also on the ground. Another big drop tine deer. And our third category is rope-a-dope moment. And that is a moment in which somebody looks like they're failing but ends up succeeding. And that was when Garrett and I killed Geronimo. After Garrett had an opportunity at him with his bow, and he sealed the deal with me later in that season. So that was another great moment. So all 3 of those deer, all 3 of those things are nominated for a Carbon Award, and we would really appreciate if you went over to Carbon TV and checked out the Carbon Awards page and voted for us. That'd be awesome to win any one of those three with all the people that are nominated for those awards. And it's a lot of reputable people out there with a lot of good content and putting out good stuff. So we're going to go ahead and drill into episode 49 and cover the second perspective for this part of the Hunterversy. Again, if you forgot because of all my rambling, the topic is eating what you kill. The ethics behind killing an animal. Should you eat everything you kill? So we're going to go ahead and give Mr. Bobby a ring, let him introduce himself, and get going. I'd like to believe that it's going to take him 3 rings, but I don't know. We will see, though.
Hey.
Hey, what's going on, Bobby? Can you hear me?
I can.
Awesome. I can hear you loud and clear. So if at any point in time I F this up and drop the call, I'll call you right back, okay?
Yeah, no problem. I know how it is.
Yeah, I'm sure you do. So that's an interesting point to bring up first. So this is definitely your first time on our podcast, but definitely not your first time podcasting. So why don't you share with the people who you are, where you're from, and a little bit behind the podcast that you run. Go ahead. Take it away.
All right. Well, thanks for having me on, number one. It's a privilege and an honor. I'm very thrilled about that. But my name is Bobby Bashaw. I am from Massachusetts, and I run Crossbow Hunting Podcast. It's a podcast not only dedicated to crossbows, but hunting in general, and our motto is no apologies.
Absolutely. Crossbows are a hot topic. We're actually thinking about doing a Hunterversy. I don't know if this is your first time, listening to one of our Hunterversies, but we were going to do a 2-part episode on crossbows and stuff like that. So we'd love for you to have, the opportunity to come on in the future and give your side of it, because it's so touch and go here in Illinois. I feel like there's definitely people that are for it, some people that are against it. So I like how your slogan is no apologies. I like it.
Yeah. You kind of have to have it, because it's one of those worlds inside of a world we all love in the first place, but it's a very controversial world, and you have to be able to take some heat and stand for what you believe in.
Yeah, well said, man. It is a controversial world. Just the other day, I feel like I was somebody invited me to become a part of a Facebook group, and I was like, okay, I'll go ahead and join in on this. And the very first post made in the group after, like, right once I joined, was one of the hosts of the group whining about another person that was, trying to steal or rip off ideas and crap like that. And it was like, hundreds and hundreds of comments. And I was just like, okay, if this is what this group's going to be, I'm out. So I totally agree with you.
Well, Grant, I believe I'm in the same group, and got over 600 comments.
Yeah, that.
I did read that, and that's a little war going on back and forth there. I will say, I don't think you want to get too much involved into that conversation right now, but right. I do admire that the owners of that group allowing other people to say their piece, which is normally you would cut it off right away and say, hey, if you're going to talk about my brand, we're going to end it.
Yeah, I totally.
They did allow it.
Yeah, kudos for them for allowing it, but I was just like, wow, this is a bunch of grown adults acting like 13-year-old kids on here. I'm not taking part in any of this. There's enough people trying to destroy hunting from the outside world. I think, 97% of Americans don't hunt. So if the 3% of hunting majorities do bicker and bitch back and forth between each other, there's not going to be much hunting left before too on if we're exploding from the inside. So,
I run a Facebook group called Crossbow Hunting. I got over 5,000 members, and I can tell you it's a daily battle trying to keep the peace. And but
I can imagine that it is.
Yeah.
Well, you've kind of introduced yourself a little bit, and spoken about the Crossbow Hunting Podcast. So if you guys are listening out there and you are a crossbow hunter or interested in that, then go check out Bobby's podcast, the Crossbow Hunting Podcast. I liked what you said. So, give you guys a little bit of background. I was on social media and I said, "What do you guys think about this?" That's how I usually approach things when I ask a question on social media. I'll just leave it really open-ended. And I said,
Yeah.
basically, when you kill something, should you eat it? If you do, is that ethical? If you don't, is that unethical? Basically, posed the question, put it out there, and you said something awesome, and I really liked it, so I wrote it down here. And you said, I often hear people say, shoot what you would eat. And you said, it's great in theory, but I think that means that we would be that we would be turning our back on conservation and leaving it up to someone else. Pushing that logic or personal opinion is harmful to hunting and the hunting industry as a whole. So, let's go ahead and dive right into that. What do you mean by that? And go ahead and elaborate on that point, because I was like, ooh, man.
Yeah.
That's right. Straight to the point. Real cleanly written. So go ahead, man.
Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity to expand on that, because it's a huge thing to me. My background, I used to work for U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service for years. I worked with hundreds of wildlife biologists, and conservation means a lot to me. And I've taught, I don't know, maybe 10 years of hunter education courses with the group at Fish and Wildlife Service. And these type of things really just mean the world to me. And one thing that really bothers me, and I kind of deal with it, like I mentioned, with the crossbow side of the world. But another thing that we're dealing with is the internal hatred, I think, from sportsmen themselves. And we're kind of breaking things down to even the term sportsman. Some people break hunting down into you're either a hunter or you're the sport type of hunter. And I don't like that. I don't like the trophy hunt terminology. I think it's bad for the sport. I think we either hunt for food or we hunt for conservation. There's no place out in this world right now that has a general open go out and kill what you want anymore. There's everything that we have is regulated. It's looked at from a management perspective. Now, carrying capacity, the whole nine, we don't have, let's just wipe them out for no reason. What we're doing these days is, you'll see on a lot of Facebook posts, would you post somebody shooting a spike or something? Well, if you do, you may get a lot of hassle on that. Mm-hmm. Now, the wildlife management plan includes taking of a small buck. It includes taking of a young doe or vice versa. It's already in there. And for us to sit there and trying to overcome those numbers to what we're going to try and do on a public land perspective of our own type of wildlife management plan kind of defeats the purpose of professionals putting in that work to try and manage the state's herd in the first place. So that being said, is it ethical to shoot something that you're not going to eat? That's our big topic here. And
yep,
my thinking is it's all internal. What we want to do, as long as we have the license, the tag, and the ability to do it, the rest it's your opinion. It's your tag.
Yeah, and sense? I think, yeah, totally. And I think what makes the outdoors so passionate, well, I'll use that word, a place where people care so much, etc. My brother Garrett and I have talked about this before, and I think the hatred for people, especially when it comes, to like a kid or somebody that shoots an animal that up to other people's standards is quote unquote not meeting the bar or not meeting requirements or whatever, like, the taking of a juvenile buck or something like that. Yeah. I think that hunting is tough because there's no linear payout. And Garrett and I have talked about this end over end. You know, he's big into like lifting weights, and you know, suffice it to say, Garrett's the most jacked person that I personally know. But it's not because of all the supplements and stuff that he takes. It's because he goes to the gym 6 days per week. Every week, and he's done it for the last decade, you know, and it's second nature to him. Whereas the outdoors, there's somebody that's just as passionate as you or as I, or if not even more, that could go out and they could hunt all season long and not experience their version of success. So I feel like there is a little bit of hatred back and forth with that at times, but I feel like that particular topic you brought up with those quotas, those harvest numbers being integrated within the total net, the total quota that the DNR would like to be seen put on the ground, that's something good to bring up, because they are accounting for, you know, basket rack deer getting shot. They are accounting for does getting shot. They're accounting for smaller, younger does to get shot within their quotas that they're kind of predicting and everything. And I don't know if it's the same way out by you, but there's about 5 counties east of here, so we're in Rock Island County, Illinois, kind of right where Iowa and Illinois meet along the Mississippi River here, and 5 or 6 counties to the east of us. There's actually such a lack of hunting that they're doing like controlled kills. You know, when you get over there closer to Chicago is where I'm talking about, to just get deer out of there, because they're causing pileups on freeways and stuff like that. And I don't know if that's right or wrong. That could be a hunterverse in and of itself. And I know my friend Pete Gentry, he's from the South. He's from Louisiana. And down there, there's hog tournaments in which people kill, you know, hundreds, if not thousands of hogs. I think we were talking the other day, and he said there was a person that killed like 7,000 hogs last year. And it's astronomical, the rate that those hogs can breed at, and they just destroy, you know, livestock. They destroy personal property. I mean, livelihoods of farmers and people like that. And I do agree with you. I do not think that it necessarily makes a person unethical if they don't eat everything that they kill. I think that maybe that mantra, I think that's good in theory. And you even said that. You said that in your post. You said it's great in theory, but it lacks a little bit of logic to just be going out there and killing whatever you want with the intention of maybe eating it or maybe not.
Right. It leaves it up to somebody else. Like, something, for instance, like crows. I've never met anyone who ate crows, but it's something that we sportsmen need to help manage the numbers, because they can be very destructive as well too, and farmers need that help. But I certainly don't want to eat a crow. But something like a crow brings up another thing, a big thing. You may heard of wanton waste, and that's a big issue when it comes to ethics. Wanton waste being, you know, when you shoot something, then you're responsible for using it of some sorts, not just shooting it and leaving it dead in the field. But then you can break it down to like a brown bear hunt. Somebody who's hunting one, an interior versus a coastal beer. They say the coastal beers don't taste as good because of they're eating salmon, and I've never had brown bear, but I wouldn't mind trying. But some of those spots, what you're allowed to bring back and you leave are night and day differences. And now that can be picked apart of, you know, well, they left this part and they left that part and they only took this part. Well, you know, where's the ethics come in? But then again, who's the judge? Why are we judging it?
Yeah, and I think that's a really good point as well. I mean, I liked what you said about 5 minutes ago. You said as long as it's within the confines of the law, then people should be okay with it. I like that. So let me ask you this.
Sure.
I want to talk for a second about the ethics of like eating and using everything. So one person that comes up to mind, and I have this jotted down real quick here, was Meat Eater. Okay, so if you've ever watched the show Meat Eater?
Sure.
Perfect. So you'll go and you'll see basically the back end side of the hunt. So Steven Ranella, the host, does a great job of him and his crew going out of state, in state, out of country, in country, domestic, international. They go all over the world and hunt animals. And when they do, and wherever they kill them, they show how they break the animal down and how they use all of the things inside the animal. So I guess what I'm asking you, and this is kind of like a little interesting thing I was thinking about the other day after you had commented. Let's take a white-tailed deer, okay? I don't know for you, but at least for me, I know that 99.9, nearly everybody, other than I can think of like one person out of my realistic circle is probably like 250 or 300 hunters that I actually know on a name, and I could pick them out of a crowd and know who they are. 250 or 300 hunters, that's about how many people I know and interact with. And nearly every single one of them will take a deer and they will, they can field dress it, they can take it to a processing plant. Most of them even do what we do and they process their own deer. Now, Steven Ranella, he takes it to a whole nother level, right? So those game will be broken down in the field, and then he will go over how to make like bone broth from an axis buck, or he'll go and shoot a water buffalo and he will boil like the stomach. And I know I'm just making up examples. I don't know if that actually exists, but he does very elaborate things with the things that he harvests in the field, right? So to that end, if somebody was like really eating and consuming and using every single thing that they ate, I mean, there'd be a lot of white-tailed deer hunters that would probably, that Steven Ranella would be shaking his head at, right? Because you take the hams, the rump, all the meat, quote unquote, deboned, but I mean, he takes it another step further when he's making like bone broth. And I don't know very many whitetail hunters, at least, that take the rib cage out of the side of the whitetail and actually eat whitetail ribs. I know some hunters that will take their like paring knife and they'll run it through the ribs and get those strips of meat out between the ribs and then like throw it into their ground deer pile. But I feel like when you start taking it to that nth degree and really ratcheting it up there tight, that a lot of people would seem unethical. I think it just kind of depends on who you're talking to and what they believe. Like you said, it all comes from inside, internally. So my next question for you here, and the question I'm, dying to know is, pests versus big game. Lots of people, when I posted this question in a different group, had said that they were okay with killing a pest, like a mosquito lands on your arm, boom, you swat it, kill it, it's dead. A coyote. Lots of people viewed a coyote as a pest. Although I did have a couple people in that group say that they ate coyote, and they like smoked it. And I just, me personally, I have never eaten one, but a couple of them were like, "Oh, it's okay, blah blah blah. Here's how I cooked it, etc." But what do you think on that? What's your stance between the division of like pests versus small and big game? And whether or not this theory of eating everything you eat, how do you think it holds up when you're examining those two groups?
Well, I think number one, the first thing that pops to my mind is it on the hunting list? Is it on the trapping list? And they are. Many of those things are. And then, we can break it down. We can call our division of wildlife and ask why. Why are coyotes on the list to be hunted? Why is there no limit for them? Why is it white-tailed deers in my state you can get $2 and an antlerless tag if you're lucky? How come the coyotes you can keep hunting and take as many as you want? Although we do have specific seasons for them, but So that's the first things that pop into my mind is, are they there? Why are they there? And then, who am I to judge why? I'm not. I don't think I can. I think I don't have the information on why we're trying to balance this part of the state or the region from this particular species. But I do understand on a conservative level that the effects of one of them being overpopulated can be drastic to so many different animals, and so there's a major need for it.
Sure. So do you think, I mean, from your DNR background, I almost just said Illinois DNR just because I'm so used to saying that in conversation, but with your
okay.
with your Department of Natural Resources background and all the hunter safety stuff that you're involved in, do you think that those numbers, like you said, coyotes, you can kill an unlimited amount. This is the same in Illinois as long as it's during certain times of the year.
Right.
And you're a safe distance away from houses, blah blah blah, and you're following all the guidelines, you can pretty much kill as many as you can. But do you think that those numbers exist so that other species can thrive? For example, do you think those numbers are limited for at least like an Illinoisan like myself? The big game species here would be deer and turkey. So do you think that's why that's that high? Yeah.
I think there's a lot of different reasons for a lot of different areas. I know, like you mentioned earlier, for some places maybe near Chicago, and we have those areas around here closer towards Boston where they're opening up the season for whitetails sooner. And a lot of that may be that the area isn't overrun with whitetails, but the car accidents are going up. So insurance purposes, they're trying to lower the numbers in that area. And it may not just be an overpopulation, but so I think each case, each state, and it's actually funny, the difference is that each state will handle how they handle them differently. Some of them it's just night and day,
Mm-hmm.
and it just cracks me up. And it's like, you see them all. Oh, look at the wolf topic.
Oh,
my
man.
goodness. I mean, one state to the next, it's like, wow, so how they're managing them and why they're managing them. I mean, you could get a degree in trying to figure out, the deep, dark rooted reasons for why they're actually doing it that way.
Yeah, I totally agree with you on that. Even just like if you look at a neighboring state, at least for us, there are a lot of different regulations, even just with whitetails. I'm thinking of a couple of friends that I have that are from Minnesota, and that is a single buck state. And I can tell you, at least from my perspective as an Illinoisan, my friends and I, we're all going out with the hope that we could stand a chance at maybe do what we're calling bucking out. And that's killing 2 big bucks, with a bow or with a gun or whatever a year. And that's like the ultimate pipe dream goal, right? Is bucking out in Illinois. But in Minnesota, at least for me, if I went up there to hunt and if I lived up there, I'd be thinking a lot more about that single tag that was in my pocket rather than using it, earlier in the season, what have you. That'd be a serious difference. And I believe, it's totally different state to state. And I know that the Midwestern states are a little bit different than out east versus out west, where there's a lot less whitetail. But it's interesting how the DNR's is not like federal, and all of these different rules apply. And honestly, it makes it pretty much a nightmare to hunt out of state, is what it does too.
It does.
It is not easy.
And just the price tag alone is ridiculous.
Yeah. Yep. So let's go ahead and get back to the ethics and unethics. So a great point. I don't know if you agree with this or not, but like I said, I put this question out on a really big group called Meat Hunter. It's a Facebook group that I'm a part of, and it's just a bunch of people that are down to eat meat, and it's kind of one of those groups that are like kind of the not anti-trophy hunting. There's plenty of people that kill big deer in there, but just people that are like, leave me the hell alone. I'm going to hunt and fish and do my thing, and here's what I caught, and here's a picture of it kind of deal. And a person dropped a comment on that and said, for a coyote, let it lay or kill it, fill the tag, do whatever, harvest the animal, but you don't necessarily need to feel unethical for not eating it because something else will eat it.
Sure.
So what are your thoughts on that?
Well, I would say that as far as something else will eat it, absolutely. I mean, that's just an obvious, whether it's right then or over winter or at some point something will eat it, and it will then return back to nature, wildlife, etc., through evaporation or as far as is it proper, is it right to just leave it? Well, now we're talking about that wanton waste issue, which is more like a legal aspect of some places. Certain laws of can you just shoot and then turn around and walk away? And I don't agree with just leaving something there. Number one, you got to at least go make sure it's past. You don't want to leave a wounded animal there limping around and thinking, okay, I have taken this coyote, I'm not going to eat it. I don't want the fur, but I want to manage my property. And if it's allowed, and I don't know if there's any states that allow you to just leave it, but making sure that's past is vital to being ethical, I would believe.
Yeah, I would agree with that. So what's your take on the argument of eating the game versus like a donation? Do you think it's ethical for somebody to say, okay, hey, I'm going to go out there, and like we said, people hunt for their own reasons, right? But I do know a couple of hunters that don't really like the taste of venison for whatever reason, so they'll go and they'll shoot a deer, bow, gun, whatever, and they'll donate the meat to somebody that does like it.
Yeah.
At that point, I feel like hunting then is a status thing. At least for me, I think that a person that's just going to go shoot a deer and then not eat any of it, I mean, what are you really hunting for then? I mean, that's a big aspect, is taking the meat off and having that pride and knowing where your meals came from and stuff like that. But at a certain point, when are you just trophy hunting to put a big set of horns on your wall so that you can show all your buddies and whoever cares on social media? And I kind of have a problem with that. I don't know what your thoughts are. What do you think?
My thoughts are quite the opposite on that. I think, and there's a lot of people who may be vegetarians but still hunt. It may sound rare, but there are some out there. And some of them actually are allergic to meat now. I heard something about some tick now, you can get bit by it and it makes you allergic. Have you heard about this?
Is it like the Lyme disease?
Not Lyme.
No.
I'm not sure. I don't. It may be that Lone Star tick, but don't quote me on it.
Lone Star tick.
Yeah. Yeah, but either way,
it says a very aggressive tick that bites humans. The adult female is distinguished by a white dot on or lone star on her back. Huh. Lots of reports. What happens if you get bit by a lone star tick? Here you go. A lone star tick will occasionally result in a circular rash, and they can transmit diseases. If you develop a rash, headaches, pains, blah, blah, blah. To avoid lone star tick bites, wear tick repellent. Okay. Oh, right here. Does lone star tick bites make me allergic to meat? A bite from the lone star tick can cause people to develop an allergy to red meat, including beef and pork. Holy shit. Yeah, you're right. Lone star tick.
Isn't that crazy?
That's crazy. What the hell?
So you may be, the barbecue king, and you get bit by this tick.
Wow.
And now you can't eat your venison anymore. So, I mean, that's just one scenario. But my real take on it is, I think we're putting the sportsman word too much into hunting again when it comes to stuff like this. I think humans are born hunters. It's an instinctual thing that it doesn't just make a lot of us just feel a little bit good. It kind of goes into our soul. When you really love it, it's deep. There's a historical feeling to it. There's a family value to it. There's a really deep-rooted connection to it. So that being said, and for whatever reason somebody doesn't want to eat meat, I don't think you're going to be able to pull that instinctual enjoyment from hunting out of everybody. I think it's embedded in a lot of us, and there's going to be nothing that's going to pull that away. And you got the bug for it, you got the bug. You may run out of the taste for meat someday, but is it still ethical? If your state allows you to have the tag, there's a need for it. And if you choose to give it to the needy, bless you for doing that.
Sure.
That's my take. Like I said, it's a little bit different than your aspect of it, but
yeah, I guess I don't understand it from my side. I really like the point you made though. So basically what you're saying is everyone has this deep-rooted want to hunt, and the aspect of going out there and hunting and committing the act of hunting, it's embedded within everybody. And just because somebody doesn't like the meat can't take them away from that. It's kind of like, if you go outside with your dog, most dogs will want to run after something you throw,
right.
Just because they're allergic to what you throw. Yeah. Right, doesn't mean they don't want to go retrieve it. Like if you've got a stick of rat poison and you whip it out in your yard, a black lab is probably going to want to go retrieve that. It's not going to feel very good when it eats it.
It's going to enjoy the heck out of it.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I like that. I like that point. I can understand that.
I don't know if it's necessarily everybody who has that trait, but I think a lot of us have it.
Sure. I wonder. This is kind of something I think of, kind of going off on a side tangent here. I like what you said and brought up because it kind of made me think about something that I think about often, and that is, I brought up the stance at the beginning that about 97% of Americans don't hunt. So do you think that deep-rooted want to go out there and hunt and be in nature, etc., is embedded within those 97% of Americans, or the rest of the world for that matter, that are non-hunters? And that where we are born, how we grow up, and who we are exposed to influence whether or not we will end up chasing that. For example, myself, I've been fishing with my dad since I was really little. I went deer hunting with my uncle for the first time when I was about 10 years old, and then started bow hunting really heavy once I turned 14 and could get out there with Garrett. But for somebody that's from, the suburbs of Chicago, I went to college with a couple of my friends, they didn't have that exposure to it just because they're growing up in, for lack of a better term, a concrete jungle, right? Where things like that are few and far between, and not a lot of people do that. So do you think that if most Americans were presented with that opportunity, that hunting would be more of a pastime and more of a lifestyle for more Americans? What do you think about that?
I think where people are brought up, it may be introduced to them more than some areas, but I think as the human species go, I think that hunting instinct is just natural. For example, let's say you take two baby lion cubs and you take them out of Africa and you bring them into a zoo anywhere in the world, and they're in this cute little small little confined area where there are no wildebeest going by, there's no zebra, there's no animals. They're going to be hand-fed or taking care of the rest of their lives for whatever reason. Well, those cubs are still going to be jumping on each other, attacking each other, sneaking up on one another, regardless where they are. It's just their natural instincts taking over. And I think as far as human nature, having that hunting gene, I think it's just embedded in us. And some of us may not go out and buy the newest compound because you don't see it in your area as far as living, let's say, farm country, when you got some world-class bucks running around. But I think it's just embedded, and a lot of us may not act on it, but it's still there.
Sure. What about that pest versus big game argument, I kind of want to go back to that a little bit. I guess
Sure.
what differentiates something as being considered a pest in your mind and an animal worth pursuing, small game or big game? You know, because a squirrel at the onset, you know, when a squirrel is doinking through my yard in the front yard or the back or messing around on a limb with his buddy,
Yeah.
you know, I know that they have their part in the ecosystem and everything like that.
Yeah.
And I understand that, and there are squirrel hunting seasons, right, to protect squirrels, but there's not. And there are seasons in which you can trap like beaver. So is a beaver
Right.
technically considered a varmint or a nuisance like a coyote? And I know the same thing is true out west, like prairie dogs and hogs, right? Hogs are completely tearing apart several of the southern states.
Oh, absolutely.
Luckily, we don't have them all over in northern Illinois by where we are. But all of those animals, I mean, what's the distinction between a big game and a varmint or a pest? And who made that call, do you think? What's your take on that?
Right. That's a good question. I think, well, we got to look at things like fishing, for example. You know, what's a popular fish? Trout, largemouth bass, things of that nature. But then you got things like carp, where in my area we have the Connecticut River, and we got some of those carp are 40, 50 pounds in there. They're just massive, but nobody catches them. Nobody goes for them. It's just not a popular thing to do because you got smallmouth that are running by that are just incredible and fun to catch.
Mm-hmm.
But when you look at like in comparison in a pest aspect for wildlife, there are a lot of different pests out there that could be considered pests that are not part of a top 5 sportsman type of list. And I think doing the numbers, we're back to a management plan of letting wildlife officials figure that out, and then assuming the numbers going accordingly. As for open seasons or squirrels, for example, well, they know that most people come fall are going to be up in a tree looking for deer. Okay, so how many squirrels can people get? Well, if not many people are squirrel hunting anymore, then they may up it to unlimited, or they may have to bring it down to 5 a day. It's all got to be balanced, whether it's a pest animal or an animal that we would consume, I would say.
Sure. And I suppose that one of the things as a hunter I want to get clear and out, and I do think we've touched on this a little bit. I feel like sometimes hunters get into the bad mistake of thinking they're a wildlife biologist.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And I do not think that. Now,
Yeah.
for anybody out there that's a really passionate deer hunter, I totally get it. I do it too. Garrett and I constantly talk about our deer herd health. Lots of whitetail hunters do.
Sure.
But I want to point out, though, that knowing how many deer you see a night and how deer are interacting and seeing a deer or finding a deer dead with EHD or CWD or whatever caused their death does not necessarily make you a wildlife biologist. And I feel like lots of hunters will use that kind of as a crutch when they're arguing with a non-hunter about why they're hunting in the first place and the ethics of hunting. And so I do think it's hard to, really dive in. And I would really like to get the opinion of those people listening. If you are a biologist or somebody that has better of an idea about the talk that Bobby and I are having right now, then chip in the comments. So what do you guys think are these harvest numbers and things we're talking about that DNRs are establishing, are they just, so far out of reach above our heads, or is this something that could be explained? In fact, maybe I'll pencil that in for a future episode, trying to get a DNR representative on here.
If I could jump in on that for a second, Grant.
Sure.
I think one of the important things that we gotta note that a lot of the wildlife biologists, what they're doing a lot of the times is taking all the information, whether it's gathered from assistants or the public, and then they're trying to make, professional, educated, decisions off of that. So as far as a lot of people out there who are viewing and studying on their own, that information is still helpful, and it is important. A lot of states will do things like turkey brood surveys, or my state, Massachusetts, you'll get a survey at the end of the year after whitetail season. How many moose did you see? And that information helps them. And it wasn't all just calculated from wildlife biologists, but I do agree. Some people do try to take it too far in their own hands, and kind of pat themselves on the back for being the know-it-alls. But I think there's a place for everybody's information that can be helpful.
Sure. I would agree with that as well. I think you're hitting the nail on the head with that. They're just kind of throwing, their expertise and taking all these harvest numbers and all this data and using their knowledge and their expertise to best kind of guide what the whole is doing, kind of like playing puppet master. And, people like you and I are just the puppets that are used to, to control a lesser puppet, which is the animal. Not that animals are any less than what we are or anything like that, but you kind of get what I'm saying there.
Absolutely.
But I had another interesting comment on my post. And this particular comment said, for most animals, that is true. So we're talking about, I'm assuming this guy's talking about big game hunting or small game hunting, something that you're going to consume. For some rodents and pests, they're hunting for control of them. So let's think about like a raccoon and a possum here for a second. Or a mouse or or something of that nature, right? Most of those are pestilent, but I don't feel like I hear of a lot of people eating those. I do know a lot of people, though, that will kill raccoons and they'll go and sell the hide or tan the pelt or something like that.
Sure.
But it's a hard sell for me to eat a possum, I gotta say. Would you eat a possum?
Yeah. I have never, but I've seen them. I don't know if you know where the term playing possum comes from. Have you heard that before?
No, I have not heard that.
Basically, it means people will use that like someone's playing possum. What it means is you're like playing dead. And a possum will do that if they're scared. They'll just kind of lay there, and they could be like foaming from the mouth, legs up and stiff, and people or animals will think they're dead. I'm not sure if there's a mist or a smell that comes with it, but it's pretty neat to actually see it. And then after they think the coast is clear, they just get up and walk away.
Yeah. I've definitely watched a possum play dead before. And I gotta say, I personally have a vendetta against possums. I think nothing will clear a nervous herd full of deer in a food plot in late season after they've been shot at for a few shotgun seasons and bow hunted hard for 3 months. I don't think nothing scares them any worse than a possum rolling around, and they're just so clumsy and weird looking when they come barreling through the woods. It's just like, I do not understand how any possum is not just picked off by all the coyotes around. Poor eyesight, they're slow, they're bright white. I just don't understand it whatsoever.
It's nothing I would ever want to eat. But and it's still like it's a big topic. Should we hunt them? Should we help? What if we're not? Are we turning our backs on conservation by not doing it? I don't know.
There was another person that got a little testy with me, and this is an interesting thought as well, and I'll see what you think about this. And he left this comment, and he said, "This is dumb, period." I was like, oh man, great start. Tell me how you really feel, boss. I'm glad we don't know each other. and I was like, holy crap, I just asked a question, for crying out loud. Like, either way, I'm all for like the help a guy out, hunters helping hunters kind of mentality. Yeah. So when there's a person that's unlike that, I don't really see eye to eye with him very well, but whatever. He's entitled to his own opinion, whatever. But he said, this is dumb, period. Most common justifications for killing an animal, most people commonly justify them killing an animal and then just letting it rot as population control. This is bullshit. The concept has two roots. First, this insane notion that nature somehow needs us to quote unquote control it, as if it didn't get along just fine for the 4.5 billion years before we showed up. And second, the instinctive human fear of predators. What are your thoughts on that? I mean,
what was that last one? Fear of
the instinctive human fear of predators.
I'm not sure what he means by human fear of predators. Like we're afraid of predators, or
maybe I suppose like our ancestors, right? Like if you're a pilgrim with a shitty little single shot musket, right? Yeah. And you're kind of out hunting through the woods in the northern parts of, the United States. Sure. And you've got a single flintlock, single bullet. You probably I myself would be pretty scared shitless to run into a wolf pack or run across a wolf pack, right?
I'm with you on there, yeah.
I'd want to get the hell up a tree and hopefully wait for backup.
Absolutely.
But so maybe that's what he means by that. But let's go back to his first point. Aside from the personal bashing on my question and my character, which he did here, I thought he did make an interesting point on his first part of his argument. He said it's the insane notion that somehow nature needs us to quote unquote control it, as if it didn't get along just fine for the 4.5 billion years before we showed up. So what are your thoughts on that? Should we? Is hunting even ethical at that point by his argument?
Now we're getting into scientific stuff, like, where the saber-toothed tigers go, and, was that due to a meteor, or did man mess that up somehow?
Yeah.
How far are we going to go with it?
Yeah, it's definitely a slippery slope, man.
It is. As far as like, I don't understand certain things when it comes to like my area of the Northeast, and some people get on me about this, but we're in an area where there used to be elk roaming around, there used to be wolves around, there used to be all different. We used to have mountain lions, of course, mountain lions being one of the most widely spread animals in the world, with white-tailed deer. But were hunters really that good 300 years ago that they just took out the whole species? I mean,
yeah.
I know hunters that can go a couple of years without getting anything.
Yeah.
But somehow we were able to clear out species after species. So
that's true. I mean, there was a lot of Native American buffalo, here on the Great Plains before we showed up, and there's definitely none living, at least in the state of Illinois, a wild buffalo herd. Otherwise, I feel like we would have heard about it. And most of those are protected animals now, and I do agree with you. It's interesting that this guy brought this up because amongst being kind of abrasive on the internet, which that's a shitty place to be a jerk anyway. You know what I'm saying? Like,
for sure.
Like when you're on a big forum or something where you can kind of sit and hide behind a keyboard, and you're just like, I can say whatever I want with no fear of anyone saying anything back to me, right? Nobody's ever going to find this.
With a fake picture and
yeah, exactly. He elaborated, and at one point I had read enough. I was like, okay, this is an asshole, but it is a smart asshole. This guy is making some good points. So he went on to say, without predator, sorry, I'll back up. I wrote all this down just because I was so intrigued, and I wanted to hear your thoughts on it, because I was like, okay, for being a dick, this guy is he is smart. Like he's trying to answer my question, which I can appreciate, and he did spend some time writing this also.
That's good.
And he said, once we developed the technology and this fear of predators, along with the social pressures that led us to actively exterminate animals.
Yeah.
Almost all of the large predators in the continental U.S. are often now referred to as predator control. And that is, again, rooted in this crazy idea that nature somehow needs us to cull her predators for her. And then he went on to say, without predators, the prey populations, i.e. prairie dogs, for example, have exploded. They can tear up large tracts of land, and when they are so densely populated, disease and starvation are very serious and real problems. This is the same thing that happens with other species like white-tailed deer. So, in order to prevent suffering, you almost have to cull prey populations since you have exterminated all of the predators. So, basically,
I think human morals are coming into play now, and we have the Endangered Species Act, and why do we have it? Well, to protect what is going out and try to save things from going extinct. And years ago, we didn't have that. Supposedly, that's part of why a lot of those animals we mentioned are no longer here. As far as some going for different reasons, sure, climate change and all that, a million other reasons. But, we have those morals now, and we have ethics of trying to save things, the panda bear being one, of course, we don't have to. Those have suffered for years, and we've been working hard to keep them from going extinct, and some things have recovered well. Bald eagles, I see them flying around all the time around here now. It's awesome.
Mm-hmm.
It's just quite the sight seeing a bald eagle flying above you.
Yeah. Have you ever seen a juvenile bald eagle, Bobby?
I don't know if I would be able to recognize it. We got some big birds that fly above, but the bald eagle with the white head and the tail, it really sticks out.
Yeah, I agree with. I definitely, it's easy to spot a bald eagle for sure, a big one, just because of that white capped head. But I think I saw one the other day. I think when they're juvenile, they might be gray, but I don't know. Somebody let me know. I think I might have seen one though, because it was right next to a mature bald eagle. Like it was, it wasn't the other day. It was about 2 months ago, right once the crops had been planted in Illinois. So you can see a long ways, right, once the corn and beans haven't popped up and stuff like that. And there was a big bald eagle standing in a field just 20 or 30 yards off the road, really, and there was one right next to it. And it was kind of gray and eagle-y looking, and I just didn't know if it was also bald eagle. Sorry, let's get back on the train here. Another comment, let's see what you think about this one. If the animal is destroying property, then I say hunt it. But if you are going into their territory, killing them and letting them sit and rot, there's a problem.
Oh, goodness.
That's not hunting, but more so a senseless killing. You are not making a living or providing food for your family or doing really anything good for the ecosystem, which against that point that the guy brought up like 3 comments ago that we talked about if you kill something will eventually eat it. So you don't need to necessarily feel bad about killing it. But I kind of feel like it always goes back to your point in the very beginning. It's like, where do you personally stand on it? But what do you think about that?
Well, there's a lot going on with that. One of the topics that really stick out is I may jump off for a second, but coyotes, for example. There's a big debate on hunting coyotes because a lot of people say hunting them doesn't reduce the numbers, because when you take a lot of coyotes out, what happens is your rodents population end up skyrocketing. Sorry.
No, you're good.
And so when the rodents go up, the coyotes that were bred have more of an abundance of food, so then they end up rebounding quickly because their food supply is way up. So it's like a fighting battle. Whereas you don't hunt the coyotes, the rodent population goes down because you got triple the coyotes, and it's just up and down kind of balance, and
like a roller coaster, really.
Yeah.
So the populations of the rodents, the populations of the coyotes are mutually independent upon one another, and if one is not existing, then the other one goes up. And when they're both kind of at that equilibrium point, like you've got your coyote population like standing right at 5 out of 10, and you've got your rodent population standing right at 5 out of 10, that's kind of like the sweet spot in the middle, because we're never really going to terminate all the coyotes and the rodents. Without the coyotes to police the rodents, they'll explode. So all the coyotes that are left will then skyrocket because it's food is readily available for them and survival is easier for them. Is that kind of the gist of what you're saying?
Yeah, and it goes for the same thing with the owls and the hawks and other animals, and it's all tied in together on whether or not a pack of coyotes or not. It's that simple, and the balance can be crucial in how we handle it. And as far as having such a big deal to do with it, yeah, I think we really do. I think we're really have a lot to do with it, and just leaving it, then goes back to those morals and ethics. Do we let certain species get wiped out because we didn't protect it enough?
Yeah. Yep. Yes, I would agree with that. And I really like what you said about, I guess just the whole, I'm still kind of hung up on the whole, thing you said about the roller coaster. That's really interesting and a hell of a good point. I mean, that's something that I haven't thought of before, kind of in terms of that analogy, or have said it quite as cleanly, but if one ceases to exist, then the other one can thrive, but that means the other one can bounce back really quickly without the presence of the other one. So really, all of these quote unquote predator control methods that people are using and labeling, and like a coyote tournament, for example.
Yeah.
Realistically, it's just kind of more of a you talked about that earlier, like sportsman. I think it's kind of like a sport at that point for people, and it's more so of like a friendly competition more than anything, because coyote tournaments, I mean, happen every year where we're from, and I still see about the same amount of coyotes every year,
They've been banned in my state. Any type of coyote contest of any type is now illegal.
Really? How do you feel about that?
I was disgusted by it, to be honest. I think the people who are kind of making a lot of these decisions don't want to listen to facts and biological reasons, and they're just anti-hunters getting too involved and winning too many cases. And that's just the world where every day you turn on the news, you're finding out what the newest thing we lost in hunting, and that's just the way it's been.
Yeah,
especially for my area, Massachusetts, to be honest. I don't know about the rest of the country, but
that's sad. I will say though that like it's not a good sell, right? I mean, it's hard to defend. If there was like a panel of representatives from like animal rights activist groups, like I'll use the big one, PETA. If there's a PETA person sitting across the table from me right now and they looked right into my eyes, into the depths of my soul, and said, "Are you okay with us killing animals for sport?" I mean, it doesn't sound, like, I'll admit, even as a hunter, like, that doesn't sound good. It's not a good sell for a non-hunter. It's not like, hey, get off the bench, buddy. Like, it's not like a basketball game. Like, good shot in there. I don't know.
I always struggle with that because I don't think we hunt anything for sport. I don't think there is anything that's hunted for just sport. I think it's a term that's getting used by the antis too much. They said we're either hunting for conservation or we're hunting for meat, and there's nothing in between or different. There's no just for fun. There's a specific reason for everything that we're allowed to pull a trigger on or trap.
So to wrap this all up, Bobby, basically what you're saying is if there's a reason that the DNR dubbed this species to be hunted, to be trapped, etc., we should be able to do it, not feel bad about it. If it's in line with our ethics as a human being, it's kind of on an individual basis. So in terms of the argument, like is it ethical for someone to be eating what they kill? Of course, you and I agree with that, but you would more so be on the yes side with a few conditions. So you're in support of, hunting and also killing what you eat, but you can also see the fact that hunting is deeply ingrained within every human being, and that if we continue to hunt, that we shouldn't necessarily feel bad as long as it's justified within the management of the population. Is
Absolutely.
that kind of where you're at?
Absolutely.
Okay. Well, I'm glad. Go ahead.
And one more thing to throw in there that's gonna be huge controversy is fair chase. If I could comment on that.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
So fair chase to me is something that we're using the term that's hurting hunting as well. I've always kind of people, especially like hunt that I run on, I tell people I support all legal hunting methods or anything that was done legally I approve of. And people will try and bait me, well, it has to be fair chase. And I say, well, when's the last time you went to the local grocery store and yelled at the person who's buying hamburger over the counter there? And they're like,
right.
Well, what do you mean? I'm like, well, what's the difference from someone going to a deer farm who shot something that was done legally? Why are they a bad person while you just, drove here from going to McDonald's and got 10 chicken nuggets? I mean, why is one okay but one not?
That's a hell of a question. And even to back that up more, like a game farm, like a quote unquote fair chase, I feel like what fair chase is turning into is people just saying like not high fenced hunting, right?
Right.
That's what fair chase is, like the curtain in front of is high fence hunting.
Sure.
And I feel like like you said, as long as it's legal. But in terms of another argument that I just thought of, it's like if you've ever been to like Red Lobster before, right?
Yeah.
Right in the front of Red Lobster, they have live lobsters with their their hands tied there for like novelty, but also they'll take those out of there and cook them. You know what I'm saying? Like it's keeping those lobsters alive for the reason, and some of them even have like little tags on their tails when you go in there and stuff.
Yeah.
And it's just like it's the same thing. It's like, are you going to get mad and pissed off at a person for going to Red Lobster and saying, "Hey, there it is, right there. I want to soak that one in boiling water till he's dead and eat him." Like you're totally right.
This past spring, I've seen so many people getting bass for catching trout that were stocked, and people just hammered them for not being wild trout. And like, you're talking about, a young guy who took his 6-year-old son and they caught, 3 stringers. Let him be, man.
Yeah.
If it's legal, then what is the why do we have to live up to someone else's expectations?
I feel the same way. Lots of people, this is an interesting one for you. So every summer I go backpacking with a couple of my buddies out in Wyoming, and we go to the Bighorns mountain range. It's kind of north central Wyoming. I don't know, Sheridan area, a little bit to the west of Sheridan, Wyoming. It's beautiful country. Part of the Eastern Rockies. I mean, it's breathtaking. We hike up between, 9,000 and 14,000 feet out there. It's awesome. The views are incredible. There are fresh lakes everywhere, and there are these trout in these lakes that it's really interesting actually, because we'll fish our way all the way in, fly fishing, and in certain lakes there'll only be brook trout. In certain lakes there'll only be cutthroat trout, which is the quote unquote native species, and in certain lakes there will only be lake trout. In certain lakes or rivers there will be brown trout and rainbow trout. But it's like each lake has their own species, and I figured out why that was and how it came to be is because the DNR, when they stocked those lakes, like the Wyoming DNR, when they natively stocked those lakes, they took, their fly plane and they just dropped their guppies into large bodies of water, like one tank at a time. To preserve that ecosystem. So here I am out in the middle of nowhere. Like if I trip and fall and crack my head, I'm dead. There's no coming back for me, right? It's not like I'm outside on a sunny day on Sunday at Walmart, and if I fall and break my hip, somebody can be like, "Hey, there's a guy over there that broke his hip. Let's get him to the ER." It's like, no, this is so remote out here that we had to drive down a road in a Jeep 4 miles in a road that no one else could be able to get through unless they had big old tires and about 20 inches of clearance. And then we backpacked in 12 hours into the middle of nowhere. And it's beautiful. So it would be the last place you would expect, like, quote unquote, a stocked lake. But the Wyoming DNR, like, you know what I'm saying? Like the Wyoming DNR is manipulating the fish populations out there to make sure they're still okay, because some of those lakes are frozen for 9 or 10 months out of the year when they're up at that high of elevation. So I feel like you're totally right. I mean, what is the difference between going and getting a hamburger at the grocery store and being like, I want that hamburger, I want that 8-pack of hamburgers, versus going to a game farm?
I like sending an arrow, and I'm not going to apologize for it.
Yeah.
If it's legal, then it's legal. We need to all start getting along. And I always tell people, if you want to give up your tree stand spot to somebody else, then maybe you can talk. Other than that, don't give them a hard time for shooting a spike in their area. They may not have the 1,000-acre cornfield that the next person gets to hunt off of, or they may not be able to get out maybe 3 times a year. We all got different things going on, and we need to just get along rather than pick each other apart.
I would agree with that. I just think hunting is I think the reason that is kind of like hunting is becoming like an ego thing, which is I think ultimately at the end of the day why friendships are destroyed and why families are torn apart by hunting at times, and spats online and on social media happen, and it's terrible.
Oh, go ahead.
Yeah. It's just,
I was saying, how many Instagram likes can we get? That's what today's hunting world's coming into, and it's crazy stuff.
It's too bad.
But,
now that we've kind of wrapped up the main part of the Huntroversy here, I have a would you rather for you before you get off the phone. And before I ask you that, I do want to thank you for your time and for coming on here and sharing your opinions with me. And I really liked how you connected with me on Facebook and shot me those messages and gave me your opinion.
Thank you.
So thanks for doing that.
No problem. Thanks for having me on.
No problem, man.